when we provide these phrases and the terms themselves, the students will start to use those terms, they will internalize them, it will become part of their culture. That's how you shape culture using executive skills, through language.
Limit, like fears, are often just an illusion.
God be with you all!
In the early 20th century, Lev Vygotsky, a Russian psychologist, developed his sociocultural theory, which forms the framework for teaching and evaluating executive skills. In the theory, both language and routinization are powerful tools in a human's interaction with his or her environment. You see, the mutual interaction between the individual and the community, or the environment, shapes and forms both. Yeah, no, not like that. That's Groot. That's like half man, half plant. What I mean is, really? That's just weird. No, it's like the difference between a New Englander, like myself, and somebody from Honduras. We think differently, we talk differently, and I don't mean just the difference between English and Spanish. And then you take a New Englander and a Honduran and you compare those two to somebody from Zambia, and again, you have some radical differences. Why? Because the individual has been shaped by the culture and by the environment and culture has shaped the individual.
Evening, everybody.
Norman?
What's new, Norman?
Did you notice that when Norm walked in to the place, he said, "How's everybody doing?" And everybody stopped what they were doing and shouted, "Norm!" That's fantastic. But do you see how there's a mutual interaction? As Norm walks in, everybody's behavior changes. So he affected his environment. And likewise, his environment affected him because he now knows I need to say this phrase in order to get the reaction that I want. And so when you walk into a place, you walk into any environment, you change it. And when I walk into any environment, which is anywhere I go, I change it. And it affects me, and I affect it. Like, right now it's a hot one. It's a hot one. It's sunny. Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. I love the snow. Passport. Oh my gosh.
So the conference call is scheduled?
Yeah, sure thing. Do you want me to get the Williams report and get the assessment data as well? Finally, a day where I can just go to the park, play with my kids, get a coffee with my wife a little bit later. It's gonna be a great day. Now, all of those things, you noticed, I was changed by the environment. Now, obviously with the beach scene and the winter scene, it was changing my actual garments. However, that changed my behaviors. Now imagine if I were to walk into the library going, "Bon Jovi, oh my gosh, that's awesome!" I would be looked at strangely. I'd get the browbeating from the librarian. It wouldn't be good. It would not be appropriate. Likewise, if I went to work one day and I decided, you know what? I'm not wearing my tie. Instead, I'm gonna go in like this. What up, yo? Just does not go at all. So my behaviors are dictated by my environment. And likewise, my environment affects the way I behave. It's a mutual interaction. Now, according to Vygotsky, people are products of their environments. You've probably heard that before. But here are some quotes to really show how smart this guy really is. Pretty smart guy, huh? Now, by the way, you've probably noticed that I'm all of a sudden wearing a different shirt and a different tie. Why? Because where I am, my environment, my workplace, it dictates that I really shouldn't be wearing the same clothes every day. Now, Vygotsky also showed that the culture and history that a person belongs to shapes and creates the mindset, the language, the beliefs, and the values of that person. So the individual people and the communities mutually create each other. It's very much like this ink in the water. When the ink goes in, it's very clear to see which is the water and which is the ink, but very soon they become mixed and you can't tell where one starts and the other begins. So they've, in essence, created each other by forming something new. And that's what we're doing with executive skills, is we're forming a new school culture. You see, if we can shape the environment, then we can shape those within the environment. And that's why, excuse me, I just wanted to let everybody know that this is actually the third day of filming. And so that's why your shirt and your tie are very different. It's not the same as a few seconds ago, which was actually a day or two ago. But anyway, and in our environment, remember, we can't wear the same things over and over again. I'm sorry. Thanks, me, man. And so I'm sorry, I don't know, man. I was just filming, and then all of a sudden I showed up and I was looking at myself and it was just so weird. Weird? There's nothing weird about that. The mind cannot be separated from culture. It's not as if culture is some external factor or a force that presses on me. No, culture is within me. I am created by my culture and I am a product of my environment. So if we shape a culture or the environment, we can shape the very people in it. We can form a culture through language and routinization. Now, let's just focus on language. Language is taught. We know that. It's not automatic. It's not like you grow it like a finger or the swallowing reflex. It is something that is taught slowly, and it's created by the culture, and the culture itself has developed what it means and what it doesn't mean. There are words. Language is words, but it's also gestures and behaviors, and it gives those things meaning. Let me give you an example. A young child, very young child, learning a language. I have 4 children. And so I remember when my kids were learning language and the first time they were using words. All right, so let's use the word dog. So the first time we see a dog, I point it out and say, oh, dog, doggy, doggy, doggy. All right, and then we see another 4-footed creature and doggy, doggy, and no, that's a cat, it's not a dog. And now the kid is, and starting to understand that not everything that looks like that is going to be a dog. Because there are things like that, an elephant or a giraffe or all sorts of other animals that are not dogs. And so throughout learning, the child starts to internalize, and that is a big fancy term. Internalization is when the language starts out here from somebody teaching it to you to when you really know it. So take that as an adult, as a teacher, as an educator. You've learned certain terms throughout your tenure of being in the classroom, and something like differentiated instruction. That's a big term, fancy term, and of course it's been around for hundreds of years. It's not really new, but every culture, every generation has its own conception of what that means and what it looks like. The first time I heard differentiation, I was like, oh, all right, so what? I have to do 20 lessons for 20 different kids? No, that's not it at all. You just have to understand that certain kids learn differently and at different rates and so on and so forth. Oh, now I get the concept of differentiation. So I've internalized that, the concept of the term. So let's look at another school example, like with your students, and you want to shape the culture in your classroom and more importantly in the entire school. So let's use the word collaboration. Well, what does it mean? We have to define that for our students. We can't just throw out this term collaboration and expect them to go, oh, I know what it means. So this is what we need to do. We need to provide the terms. We need to provide the definitions. I would suggest even getting synonyms. And then we need to explain the concept. What does it mean? What does it look like? That's an example. What does it not look like? Those are non-examples. So when you do that with your students, the first time it's going to be a little awkward, like, doggy, doggy, doggy. No, miss, I'm collaborating. I'm sitting near my group, my friends, and hey, no, what are you talking about? I did all the work. I collaborated, or I didn't do anything, but I lent them my pencil. I collaborated. Here's another example. This is an executive skill that we use at my school. It's called initiative. And we use a 4-point rubric. And each of the different points has different attributes. This is very explicitly and very clearly articulated what exactly initiative means. And so these are all the key terms that are within initiative. So we have curious, interested, engaging, perseverant, problem-solving, resourceful, and seeks assistance. What we would do as a teacher is define each of these. What do they exactly mean? Even give examples of what they are and what they're not. And then the other thing that we do is we provide phrases. What will it sound like when I hear initiative? Well, something like a student saying, well, you know what, guys, this connects to, or do you think it will work? What if we do this? I bet so-and-so can help us. Let's explore this possibility. You know what, let's search it up online. Or, you know what, this is fascinating. No, I think we could do this. Those are all phrases that would demonstrate initiative. When we provide these phrases and the terms themselves, the students will start to use those terms, they will internalize them, and that it will become part of their culture. That's how you shape culture using executive skills, through language. Okay, now let's look at routinization, or routines. Values are embedded in your routines. In other words, whatever you hold dear, whatever you find to be very important, you're going to routinize. You're going to create into a routine because you value it. For example, as a father and a husband, I value very much eating meals together. So does my wife. So do my children now. So what does that look like? What's the routine? Every dinner, without fail, every dinner, we eat around the table together. Our cell phones are not out. They're not even on the table. If we get a phone call, you can hear it from the other, we don't answer it. If our landline starts to ring, we don't answer it. Why? That's sacred time. That's a routine that we've built up. So now let me put it into the context of a classroom. In a classroom, what do I value as a teacher? Me personally, I want active participation. I want active learning. So what does that look like? Well, the routines I set up, my physical layout of the classroom is no straight desks. Everything's at tables. I've got little work boxes with all my stuff inside, like notepads and post-it notes and pencils and pens and pencil sharpeners. Why? Because I want active participation. When I'm lesson planning, my routines are coming out. Every 10 to 15 minutes, I generally have some activity, something for them to do. Even if it's a 30-second get together with your shoulder partner and discuss X, Y, and Z. I want them active. For me, what I don't want to see is in a kid's face. If I see that, I immediately change over something to get them back captivated and engaged in the lesson. So what are some of the things that you value? Well, I have some colleagues and they value greatly punctuality. They love it. Oh my gosh, punctuality. And what do? What are the routines? They often stand at the door and they're looking at their watch. You see the body language? That's what they're doing. Come on, come on. And they're ushering kids in. Let's go, let's go. You got 10 seconds, 9 seconds. That's a routine. They do that every day. And when the kids come in to the classroom and they're a little late, there might be some looks, some facial gestures, some words maybe, where the teacher might say, you owe me 5 minutes at lunch, or whatever it might be. But there's a routine because that teacher values punctuality. So Mrs. Smith down the hall, she values silence. So as the kids walk in the classroom, she reminds them repeatedly, don't talk when you come in the room. I want you to come in, I want you to start working on what I have up on the board. Don't talk. And she'll say that over and over. What happens? After about a week or so, the kids start to get it. They know when they go to Mrs. Smith's room, they go in there and as they open the door, they start to whisper until they get in. And they sit down and everybody's quiet. And soon that routine has become, well, a routine. And Mrs. Smith, how does she enforce that? With looks, with facial gestures, with body gestures, and with words. So to shape the culture of a school, you use language and routinization. Now here's what I would say in closing. Be deliberate and intentional in both language and in routinization. That will get you to change and shape the culture that you want. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go and start using executive skills to shape the culture of your school.